is Focus with Jack Caudill.
And good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome to this month's edition of Focus. This month we're talking about weather forecasting here in the Black Hills and weather forecasting in general. Three guests with us to talk about that. Experts in the field. Dr. Matt Bunkers is a Science and Operations Officer with the National Weather Service here in Rapid City. He's been with them since 1991. Darren Clabo, he has been the South Dakota State Wildfire Meteorologist for the past 8 years. He is also on the faculty of the South Dakota School of Mines. And Taylor Nicolaisen, the Chief Meteorologist here at KEVN Black Hills FOX. He has been in that position for the past 6 years. You know, people have been forecasting the weather all the way back to Babylonian times. Obviously, the methods have changed quite a bit since then. When those days they were limited with what you could see. That's pretty much all they would be able to tell. But still, weather has an effect on everyone's daily life today. It affects everything from air traffic to agriculture to sports to fire prevention to also warnings of severe weather. Matt, we're going to start with you, I guess, looking back to the beginning. What first brought you into weather? How did you first catch the weather bug?
Well, I grew up on a farm in eastern South Dakota, and the weather was really important. We milk cows, we cut hay, so it was really important to our operations. And I think when I was fairly young, there was a really intense thunderstorm that came over our house. I saw the lightning strike out the window. It hit a tree. It split in half. A branch went flying, and there was just that experience really stuck with me. And then being on the farm, for how important the weather is to that just got me interested from a very young age.
Darren, how about you? What draw you into the weather world?
Well, I grew up in central Minnesota hunting and fishing, and so I think a lot of what we do in the outdoors is revolving around the weather. We have to look at the forecast all the time to, see where the wind's going to be, see if there's going to be any thunderstorms, and really I was terrified of lightning as a little kid, absolutely terrified of the thunder. And so I think it was one of those things where, in order to be okay with it, I had to learn more about it, and it just, my interest grew from there.
Taylor, how about you? You grew up in Mitchell, South Dakota. How'd you catch the weather world?
I just liked math and science and knew that's what I was good at, and looked at a list of good math and science jobs and picked out one that sounded fun. And I enjoy it. A lot of people, farmers I know, and the ranchers on this side of the state, and South Dakotans kind of as a whole are into weather, and it's fun to be part of that world.
Now looking at weather forecasting today, why is that important? What is the importance you see of accurate forecasting that we have today?
I think the whole world kind of is, we're really tight on time anymore. Everything is scheduled, and my life is where you're just busy. You want to know exactly when I can travel to Denver. I want to know when I can get out in the field. I want to know what to wear tomorrow. I think just the more accurate you are, the better you're prepared for what's coming, the better off you're going to be, and then the better your day is going to flow. And it matters up and down the spectrum, from the ranchers to the kids headed to school. Everybody wants to know what to expect tomorrow.
Darren, as you look at it, what's the importance of having an accurate forecast these days?
Well, with the primary people that I deal with, being wildland firefighters, in their daily job, if they don't have an accurate forecast, they can't safely and effectively do their jobs. We look at what drives fire behavior across the landscape, and its fuels and topography are the two somewhat constants, but weather's the big big variability out there. And so in order for us to be able to put out fire, suppress fire, or even to manage prescribed fires, we have to know what the weather's like at any given instant. So I really take a lot of pride in being able to help that community out and really ensure the safety and effectiveness of the firefighters.
Now, Matt, you look at the Weather Service, you guys, the National Weather Service. How important is the work you guys do, and why is that so important?
Well, it's really important, and one thing to keep in mind, we're all on the same team here. We work together to provide this weather information to the public. Safety is a big thing, time management, helping people make good decisions. So that's why it's really important to have accurate forecasts as we can possibly be. And so, it's exciting to be able to provide that, and it's gratifying to help put out warnings, whether it's for fire weather, flooding, tornadoes, winter weather, to help people make good decisions.
Now, talking earlier, people have been doing this for centuries, trying to predict the weather. How accurate can we be now? And really, how has this evolved over those centuries?
Well, let's just look back 20, 30 years. I remember when I came into the Weather Service, a 3-day forecast was pretty good. A 5-day forecast, you really wouldn't want to hang your hat on that. And now we can do really good out to even 7 days. We can know if there's going to be a big change coming, a storm or a front. And even our outlooks for 1 to 2 weeks have really improved. So we've come a long ways, and there's still a lot of improvement to be had. I'm sure, we still have forecasts that aren't perfect, and a lot of that is related to us just being able to measure what's going on. You mentioned at the start of the program the importance of looking out, looking outside and seeing what's going on, and that's still really important. We need to know what's going on now and even what has happened in order to better predict the future.
As a guy who's been doing this for a long time, how cool is it from when you came in to now, some of the more technological tools that you have to use today?
It's I think just as cool now as when I came in, because when I came in it was new, and there were new things coming on then. Of course now with the upgrades that we've had with the satellite that goes 16, we can see such great detail, the radar upgrades, and we'll continue to have those kind of things. So whether it's, I love it. It's different every day. It's fascinating. There's things that you can do to really keep it exciting, and it's challenging, of course, and that's what drives a lot of us to keep at it and trying to improve.
Darren, as you see that technology evolve over the years, how accurate can we be now?
Like Matt was saying, on a 12 to 36 hour forecast, we can be phenomenally accurate. You take a place like Rapid City where you have the variability in terrain, your accuracy starts to diminish a little bit because, as we know, on the west side of Rapid City, on any given morning, the temperature is going to be far different than just on the east side of Rapid City. And so trying to look at the different scales and trying to resolve those different scales is something I think we're really improving at in the field. And, with the developments of our new numerical models, supercomputing, new satellites that we have, the technological improvements have been just fantastic. And we're kind of nerds. We enjoy the new technology that's out there, and so it's just fun to see it grow.
Taylor, you've been doing this for a while. How have you seen that technology change since you got into this business?
Well, back in the day, it was felt fronts on a big board, and you'd get a printout from a printer that was one of the first printers I ever played with. It was the one that sent out the DieFax maps, and you'd get it a couple times a day, and you'd be excited. And now there's more information than anyone could possibly take in. So you develop your own style, and it just improves all the time. The 1980s, they say the 80s 3-day forecast is the same as today's 5-day forecast, and a week back then is now 10 days out, and you'll see people trying to push that number too far. But it's just going to get better and better. They say generally about every 10 years you'll improve by about a day in accuracy. So it's been on that line for a while. It'll probably continue on that line for a while.
Now, how much of this forecast is science of looking at all of the data you have, and how much of it is an art of you've been doing this, and this is what I think it's going to do?
There's a big piece of that because the computers spit out their own forecast, and you could just print that out and do it. Most people's forecasts are built off the backbone of the Weather Service. They've got a big team up there. Matt's really good. And they've got the latest and greatest, and they've got a team, and they've got a lot of experience. Most people will start from there, and you do a little bit of some tweaks here and there. But it's a little bit of an art. If you end up going someplace, you head to Cincinnati, somebody will tell you what to expect in weather. A lay guy on the street might do just as well as one of the meteorologists. It takes a while to get the feel, especially around here. Black Hills is notoriously tough to forecast for. It was Nate Silver in 528 said this is the hardest place in America to forecast for. So it's tough here.
Darren, as you look at the fire meteorology, how much of that is the data, and how much of that is you've been doing this a while and you got a sense of where this might go?
Well, obviously there's been a lot of improvements in the data, but just being able to live, breathe, and work in the Black Hills, you get a much better idea of what we're going to see locally. A perfect example, we were doing a prescribed fire a few years ago down in Custer State Park, and we were doing our morning briefing. We were down in a valley, and there was frost starting to form on the grass. It was 31, 32 degrees, but I knew there was a strong inversion setting up, and so that cold air was pooling in the valley bottom. So I knew our hillsides were going to be much, much warmer, and so we can brief for those things for the prescribed fire. You know, down below we're going to see dew on the grass. It's going to take longer for things to dry out, but because we had that knowledge that we've been here a while, we know that these inversions set up that once the fire did get on the hillsides, it was going to burn a lot more actively, and it did. I mean, temperatures on the hillsides were 20 to even 25 degrees warmer than what they were in the valley bottoms. And that's not something a numerical model can pick up on. It's just something that we have to know as being, you know, forecasters here that we've learned. So.
Matt, down to the Weather Service, how much is it, all this equipment you have, and how much is it, you've been doing this since '91?
Yeah, it's changed a lot since '91. I remember in the '90s we'd go in and there was a lot of human interaction and effort into creating the forecast. And with the advances in computing technology, there's been a pretty big shift. I think these guys would agree, where computers produce a lot more of the forecast, and what humans do, our role has shifted a little bit. Some of it is conveying the information to people, helping people make decisions. So for example, not just there's a chance of rain this afternoon, but the timing, you know, more precise location so people can plan for things like that. But as Darren and Taylor also indicated, you know, experience is really important in the forecasting. Pattern recognition. If we see a storm coming out of Colorado, you know, the infamous Colorado low, that means something in terms of how much snow we might get compared to a storm that's coming out of Montana, for example. So experience is really important, the pattern recognition. But the computers have really, because they can run faster, can do so much more, has really changed the game. And there's been a shift in what we do, what humans do and what computers do. So that's something that it's a challenge to keep up with, and that's what we're working on.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we will look at some of the challenges of forecasting here in the Black Hills. That's when we come back in this edition of Focus. And good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus. This month we're talking about weather forecasting here in the Black Hills. Darren Clabo is the South Dakota State Fire Meteorologist, also in the faculty at the South Dakota School of Mines. Taylor mentioned earlier some of the challenges of forecasting here. What are some of the difficulties in forecasting here in this area particularly?
You know, the Black Hills, it's a sea of ponderosa pine, an elevated sea of ponderosa pine amongst a prairie. Even the differences between the northern Black Hills and the southern Black Hills. The northern Black Hills get 30 inches of rain a year, while the southern Black Hills only get 15. It's different climates, and there's different drivers for the different areas across the Black Hills. It's a phenomenally difficult place to forecast for, but if you've lived here long enough, I think we can all get a better grasp of the weather that we do see.
Taylor Nicolaisen is the chief meteorologist here at KEVN Black Hills FOX. You guys forecasting on up into Montana, North Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming. What are the challenges in this particular area of getting that in all these different spots?
Part of it is where we're sitting nationally too. The Rocky Mountains kind of act as a big wall, and West Coast weather a lot of times won't have a lot to do with our weather. It takes a big system to kind of bounce over the mountains and affect us too much. So you get a lot of the Canadian air coming right down the Rocky Mountains, points right at the Black Hills area, and it's just cruising along on the prairie, and boom, it bumps into the Black Hills, and it'll change. You're forecasting for Iowa or Indiana. You see a storm coming, it's moving 55 miles an hour. It's going to be here in 93 minutes. Black Hills, a little different. It'll get slowed by the Black Hills. It'll change its path. It'll produce a little extra moisture, so it's difficult. It's just, like Darren said, the Black Hills are kind of a unique thing. It's why we're here, but the weather's a little odd around here.
Dr. Matt Bunkers is a Science and Operations Officer for the National Weather Service here in Rapid City. You guys also forecasting for a pretty broad area out here. What are the challenges that you see for forecasting here?
Yeah, we forecast from northeastern Wyoming into south central South Dakota, and a big problem that we have is a lot of the development activity occurs right over us. You know, as Taylor mentioned, in Iowa, you see a storm coming from a long ways away, but as these storms come from the Pacific across the Rockies, they kind of get broken up from the mountains, if you will, and then as they come up, east of the mountains and start getting into the better moisture, things will develop. So the skies might be clear here 1 hour, and then within a couple hours, we've had a lot of clouds develop or storms develop. So that's what really makes it challenging. You're going from nothing to something fairly quickly.
Now, looking at one of the big roles that you guys have is warning people of severe weather this coming, whether it's tornadoes or hailstorms or blizzards or whatever it is. Are we getting better at predicting what's coming in that short term like that?
Yeah, I think we've gotten a lot better, and in our detection of hail, tornadoes, flash floods from radar. So that's definitely improved. When you look at what we had 10, 20 years ago, the radar has greatly improved. And one thing that's a little maybe frightening to some people is that the computer models that we have can actually predict what the radar may look like 1 to 2 hours from now, even up to 12, 24 hours from now. And there is talk of potentially issuing warnings at some point based off the forecast radar. So instead of detecting with our radar now a storm, we may see, okay, the models are indicating there could be a storm 1 to 2 hours from now, putting a warning out for that. Now, we're not there yet, but that's something that a lot of people are really looking at in the research world.
Darren, as you look at it, how does that severe weather, or in terms of fire as well, you guys knowing what's popping up, especially thunderstorms and lightning in the fire world?
In the fire world, it's extremely important to know where the thunderstorms are going to be. The Granite Mountain Hotshot crew in 2013 down in Arizona, they got overtaken by an outflow boundary that changed the direction of the fire, completely changed the direction of the fire, and it overran that hotshot crew. So if we can better understand where thunderstorms are developing, where these outflow boundaries and these wind changes are going to happen, we can better warn our firefighters out in the field to ensure that they have the knowledge to put themselves in a safe position in order to prevent the tragedies that we have seen in the past.
Are we getting better, and are there areas that we still have a ways to go?
We're getting much, much better. The numerical models that we run now are extremely high resolution. They can create very good looking output, but there are still leaps need to be made in the field. We still have some fundamental misunderstandings. We still don't even know the state of the atmosphere. You know, the temperature differences between the two different airports out on the prairies make a difference in the models, but we don't know what the temperature is between the two airports because there's nothing there to measure it. So it's a dynamic field. It's changing quickly, but there's a lot of great research that's being done, and there's a lot of optimism, I think, in the field to see those forecasts improve.
Taylor, as you look at it, how are we doing as far as advanced warnings of severe weather? How much improved are we?
I think it's a lot better, especially in the short term. As the computers are able to process more and more information, and you're able to take more and more information. You're getting more and more data put into the system. You're cranking the data a little bit more, and your model is more complete. It's getting a lot better. It'll continue to get better as we get more data and even more people involved. The more spotters you have, the better off you're going to be. The number of tornado reports goes up significantly over time. And people wonder about, are there more tornadoes? A lot of people think it's probably just because there's a lot more people around. You're spotting the tornado. A tornado used to go across part of rural Wyoming and no one would spot it, and now we have more people around and more people recording the tornado or whatever. The more information, the better, and things will just get better going forward.
Now you talk about we're getting better going forward. What is in the future? What technology is out there that's coming?
The computer models just keep getting better and better. Obviously, smartphones make a big difference. People have a forecast in their pocket at all times, and the more information people can get, it's like the butterfly effect. If the model says there's going to be 2 inches of snow tomorrow, and there's actually 3, that will influence can influence pretty significantly over time later down the line in the forecast. So the better input you get into the system, the better output you're going to get in the system. That's getting better, and the computer's abilities are a lot better.
Darren, where do you see us going down the road 5, 10, 20 years from now?
I think our reliance on computers, even artificial intelligence, is going to be a big component to forecasting down the road. I think other technologies, we're launching new satellites that have the ability to drastically improve not only what we do for forecasting, but identification and tracking of wildland fires. The new satellites can do all sorts of very interesting things. There's some new radar designs that are out there that are a completely fundamentally different design than what we have today, that can see the storms in a lot higher resolution. There's just all sorts of these technological advances, but I think that at the core of it is going to be the human meteorologist, because there still needs to be somebody out there like Matt or Taylor that can translate that forecast information into a nice package that the public can understand. And so the humans, I think, are still going to play an important role in the process, even though the technology continuously improves.
Matt, where do you see us going?
Well,
forecasting down the road?
I really think observations are important to forecasting, and we're going to see some improvement in that. As Taylor mentioned, cell phones. Well, cell phones record pressure, and there's an effort to get pressure data from all people's cell phones ingested into the system so we can process that. Automobiles are now having some smart technology based on, are the wipers moving? You know, they have temperature sensors and that sort of thing. That's information that we can pull in. So the more observations we can get in the system, there's a lot more people getting home weather stations and putting that online. And after some quality control, we can use that as well. Another area that I think we'll see some improvements, as Darren mentioned, is radar. Maybe 10 to 20 years down the road, but we will look at even faster scanning updates, a minute or less, and perhaps a bigger network of a lot of smaller radars. So think of where your cell phone towers are. There could be small radars on these cell phone towers. So there's a lot of potential there, but a lot of time before that will happen.
How do we compare to other parts of the world when it comes to forecasting and weather and all that kind of thing?
Other parts of the country, we're in an area where we have more limited observations in terms of the radar, for example. There are places like in Oklahoma where you have 2 or 3, maybe 4 radars covering a given location. But when you look at us compared to other parts of the world, we do have a really good system of forecasting, of observing the weather. So we should be fortunate for that.
All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, we'll look at just what kind of expectations people have when it comes to the weather forecast. That's when we come back with this month's edition of Focus. And good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus, talking about weather forecasting here in the Black Hills. Taylor Nicolaisen, the chief meteorologist here at Black Hills FOX. Taylor, how do you deal with the expectations people have? Because sometimes you can nail 9 forecasts perfectly. The only one they remember is the 10th one that maybe wasn't quite right.
Yeah, they, that's part of the gig. You knew that going in. They didn't talk about it at school. That's how it's going to go. I've heard it likened to, the fight on the war and terror, something like that. Nobody wants to talk about the 9 plots that were spoiled. If you nail them, you get them right. Everybody's excited. It's the one that slips through that makes a big deal there. You just kind of got to roll with the punches, and you try to make sure people's expectations are in line. Not all weather forecasts are the same. Some of them, I know it's going to be 61 or 62 degrees tomorrow. I know it. There's other times where we'll forecast 62, but you have to tell everybody it could end up low 50s to upper 60s, or there's a 60% chance of snow. If it snows, you're going to get 2 inches, but there's a 40% chance it's not going to snow. You just try to get everybody's expectations in line with the actual science.
Matt Bunkers, Science and Operations Officer with the National Weather Service. I'm sure you guys hear that when you are not right, probably more than when you are right. People notice that more. Is that something you just get used to?
Yeah, it's something we get used to because we just know forecasting isn't perfect. We do our best, and there's certain things either because we can't measure, we don't have the observations, or that we just don't have a good understanding of what the atmosphere does in those situations. We're going to miss. That happens, and that's why we continue to go to conferences and interact with others to learn, why we maybe miss this forecast and try to get better. So that's the goal, and then also educating people what we can do. We can't predict 5 hours from now exactly where a thunderstorm is going to be, but we might know they're going to develop over the Black Hills in a general area. So the expectations is really a big thing to educate people about.
All right, got about 30 seconds to go. I want to thank you guys for coming up, and thank you for the work that you do. Taylor Nicolaisen, Darren Clabo, and Matt Bunkers. Again, lots of forecasting weather, something that does affect, obviously, everyone's life. And that will do it for this month's edition of Focus. Hope to see you again the first Sunday night of next month. Good night.